want things to look a certain way. And then in the world of social media, we're always comparing ourselves. However, when we let go of the should, then we make space for the good. Then we can make space for the what is when we let go of some of that expectations.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much for joining the Darren Well podcast. So grateful to have you here today. So today I wanted to share more about with the audience about mindful living and self-care. So women, so how we can take better care of ourselves. And also for the guys out there. I know we have a few guys that listen, but mainly for the women. So how we can take better care of ourselves. So, and I love that you're also a mental health therapist. So we'll have also the mental health lens as well. So, but yeah, welcome again, Vanessa. Feel free to give us your bio, so a brief intro, like who you are. I know you're a speaker. I know you're a mom coach. I know you like do all the things, as well as a mental health coach, mental health licensed therapist. But yeah, give us your brief intro, your why. Why did you choose to do all these different things? What inspires you?
Yes, Rita, thank you so much for having me. It's truly, truly a pleasure. I love the alignment that we have in a lot of our work and the mental health lens, of course. I feel like that's the way I look at the world at first, but then through my lived experience. So, to share with that a little bit with you, my name is Vanessa de Jesus Guzman, and I am a first generation Dominican American. My parents came over from Dominican Republic in their early 20s, and I share that because it definitely shapes the way also that I look at the world and my lived experiences. And then the other biggest identity piece to me is being a mom. And that's a lot of the work that I do. And I always say, like, you know, how sometimes you're juggling things, whether you're a mom or you're not, you know, just a busy, busy human in this world. And we juggle so many things that sometimes we can't remember the last time that we did for us, and that thing really hit me hard when I was getting my hours. Now I'm sure we're in different states, but getting hours to become a licensed therapist is this
It's
ridiculously
intense.
long journey. People don't realize all the work that we go through to get to where we are. So it was about maybe 10 years ago or so, I started my career off as a teacher and then a school counselor. So I was a school counselor by day, and then at night, I would do in home therapy for at risk kids. And I was taking classes, and I would leave my house at 7, get home at 7 or 8, was always on the go. In the middle of this, my son was about 2 or 3 years old at this time. So I was barely seeing him or my husband. Through the busyness of it all, I gained 60 pounds. I was completely drained. I wasn't present for my family, but I wasn't present for myself either.
Mm,
And I couldn't even say that I was putting myself last because I wasn't even on the list. It wasn't even a
yeah.
thing that I was not present for myself. And that experience, I was actually at a Spanish speaking mom's home. And those were a lot of the clients that I have because I'm bilingual. So, you know, we get all the Spanish speaking families. And I remember I walked into her home and I was there for her son, but I don't know what was it that she went through that day. And she was just an emotional mess. And she had to kind of unload everything she was going through. And as I was supposed to be there for her son, that day was a therapy session for her. And I thought, if no one is helping these moms, if no one is giving them attention, if they're not learning how to help themselves, then the work that I'm doing with these kids, which I truly believe that I was put on this earth to help children first, as being a former and retired educator at this point, I said the work that I'm doing with them is going in vain because
Yeah.
one 50 to 60-minute session a week with me isn't going to really help the mom and then how to help her kids. So it was that experience that led me to create Amiga Moms, which first started as a community and just social events. And I would sprinkle in mental health, right? Just not
Mm,
really make it about mental health, but sprinkle in how to take care of yourself, how to really believe in mindful living and how to embody that, which we can get to in a little bit because it's not just hours of meditation, because who has time for that? So I'll
right,
share
right.
that more with that in a little while. But that was what led me to create Amiga Moms. And it started with that and then eventually turned into coaching. And then I got my hours and finally became a licensed therapist. And because I believe in mindfulness so much, I named my practice and my podcast Free to Be Mindful, because I believe whatever you're doing in this world and where you're free to be anything, you're always free to be mindful. You always have that choice. And it was these experiences that now, more than 10 years later, I am a retired educator. As I said, I'm busier than ever with three different businesses, had a miracle baby after turning 40,
Oh my
and I
gosh.
still yell here and there because being a mom to a tween son and now a 1 year old is, insane and a lot. However, I am less overwhelmed. I am happier. I'm healthier and I live my life intentionally. And that's really my passion on not only to help mothers, but to help people realize that we don't need to always feel drained or always live in this go, go, go. We can just be and reduce the overwhelm, find joy, and live life intentionally without hours of meditation. And I've done that through the work that I've done in my own personal life. And now I love to help others do the same.
Wow, wow. I love what you said as even thinking about yourself. I wasn't even on the list. And I think as women we're so busy, as you say, doing all the things, and we're not even on the list. Not even last, but not even on the list at all. And so when you think about mindful living, and one, I love your podcast. I love your philosophy, free to be mindful, like that is, I love the freedom, because that's literally what it feels like when you're
Yeah.
like leaning into mindfulness. But and I love, as we'll talk more to today, is that mindfulness isn't just like sitting and meditating. Like that is
Hmm.
so a small snippet of like what mindful living is. And so I'm glad that we're going to talk more about that. So when you think about burnout, so how do we know when we've gotten to burnout? I think we know when we're at that point because like we're just flat out tired. But how can
Yeah.
we, like, as we're building up to the stress and piling on the things, so how can we think about mindfulness in a way to prevent burnout?
I think that's where the number one thing and the foundation to even living intentionally and mindfully is having a really good self-awareness. You
Yeah.
have to know, where your baseline is and how even the small things, everyday life, even from this conversation to, walking my dog after to preparing a meal, whatever it is that you're doing, to how your energy shifts as you're living through life. Because if you don't have that awareness of your baseline, then, like you said, you don't realize that you're burned out until it's hitting the fan. You're screaming in your car, and you don't know even what step to take next. But if you're paying attention as you do little things or everything, every little thing in your life, then you're more aware of, I like this. This makes me feel drained. This is taking too much out of me. This is giving me more energy. And so you're
Mhm.
just more aware of not only how you feel, but then how you show up, right? Because it's not just an external thing, but it's also an internal thing. And I think that one thing feeds the other. So with that self awareness, then you can begin to say, okay, like this is not going okay. I need to do something different in order to not lead to this outcome. And keeping in mind that you can't control the people out there, you can
Right.
only control you.
Right, right. That's good. That's good. And thinking about knowing your baseline, I think that's for many people, it's hard to know what's my baseline. And so that's where having a therapist, having a coach is helpful in your life to learn those things about yourself. I know for me, when I think about like my life stages, and even you too, thinking about like life stages with children, pre-children, now with children, um, pre college, after college, like all these different life stages, we our needs change. And so thinking about baseline, like how do you adapt to that? How do you tune into that? Any thoughts when you think about like mental health pieces of how they can learn what is their baseline. So, like stress symptoms, what are the triggers? Like, how can they pay attention to those things?
Yes, and before I answer it directly, I want to say our needs change, but also we change as well.
Right.
We don't want to stay stagnant as individuals. We have our personalities and our foundations, and maybe culture plays into it or whatever it is, but we do want to grow as people. That's one of my life philosophies is to continue learning, growing, and then using that to help inspire other people. And as we change, like as you said, like from the littles to then college to then empty nesters, we have to understand that we are changing as individuals. And that goes back to that self awareness of really understanding ourselves. And mental health plays a huge part into it because we all have mental health, and I know that you know that, but so many people are like, all right, sometimes you don't even get a physical, on the once a year that you're supposed to, so to speak. But we all have our physical health. We know when we're feeling under the weather physically. We know when to reach out for a doctor if we have an infection or whatever it is. But sometimes we ignore our mental health and we keep on trudging through as opposed to making this space to really check in. How am I feeling? How am I showing up for others? How am I showing up for me? And with what intentions do I want to go on through this life?
Yeah.
Often live through autopilot. It's kind of like a go, go, go. We don't know how we got to our destination. We don't know where the cookies went or the bag of chips went when we're just watching TV mindlessly. We're down to the bottom and we're like, wait, what happened? I'm still hungry because we just
Right.
weren't paying attention. And that's where that awareness feeds in then to the mental health because if we don't know how we're feeling or how we're showing up, then that's when we're just going through life like zombies, and then where's our joy? Where's our intentionality? Where's our fulfillment? We can't leave that up to chance. We can be really intentional about getting intentional.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, and I love how you talked about joy. So paying attention to the joy, paying attention to the energy that you get, or the lack thereof.
Right.
So the lack thereof when you think about, hey, this thing or this space or this relationship, like all of these things are either giving me joy. It's many times it's not a gray. It's very black and white. It's either giving me joy or it's not. It's either giving me energy or it's not. And so, what things are life giving? So, paying attention to those. So, when you think about self care, like how does that play into mindful living?
Not only paying attention to where you are and what you're doing and how you're feeling, but just paying attention to like the everyday little things as I mentioned before. So many of us when we think of mindfulness, and it's such a word in pop culture now, we hear it all of the time, but sometimes we don't really understand what it truly is, because even when we click it into Google, we get pictures of people sitting crisscross applesauce, maybe oming, miraculously floating above a body of water or a pile of rocks, right? And it's kind of like, well, yes, that's great. And you can be mindful while you're meditating, but you don't have to meditate to be mindful. You can be mindful while you're doing yoga. But you don't have to do yoga to be mindful. You can be mindful as you're washing your hands and paying attention to the suds that the soap is making and the scent of the soap and the temperature of the water. And it truly is paying attention to the right here and right now. I always add with kindness and with curiosity, not just to the outside world, but also to yourself. And that's where self care comes in. Because as we started, we don't even put ourselves on that list. And we also often think it's how we treat other people. But we first have to do that inner work in order for us to show up the way that we want to show up. If we even are so aware of like, how am I showing up to other people, right? So really being intentional about how we're taking care of ourselves and really being compassionate to ourselves, because I truly feel as though when kindness is your compass, life is easier to navigate, and that's
Say that
not just
again.
outward.
When kindness is your
Ooh.
compass.
When kindness is your compass, life is easier to navigate. But that's not just external. That's also internally. So when we treat ourselves a little bit more kindly, and that goes into the self care and self compassion, It's not just about the mani-pedi. It's not just about the massage, although you better believe I have a monthly subscription to Massage Envy. I've had the same masseuse for the last, like, 15 years because I know that that's what I need for my physical health, but I also need to do a lot for my mental health in order to treat myself kindly and with compassion so that, again, you are the best version of yourself, especially for those people you love and care for, whether it is your family, if you have littles in your lives, your colleagues, who even a stranger on the street. We have to be really intentional about the way we show up.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. I love that. I love that kindness so much, not so much, yes, to the outside, but also way more to the inside. How we speak to ourselves, how we treat ourselves, how we honor ourselves, how we honor our time, our energy. That's good. That's good, Vanessa. As we start to wrap up, what are some mindful ideas that you have that listeners can take away? So when you think about mindful living, the framework, and I know there's tons of ideas about that, but what are some snippets that they can take as action steps to do today?
I think when we wake up is giving ourselves a moment. Again, doesn't have to be to meditate, right? Or if it it can be prayer, but it can even be how, like, what are my intentions for today? How do I want to navigate people, especially people who challenge you, which we can encounter in our everyday? Not a to do list, but how do we want to show up with people? So, waking up with intentions on how we want to live that day. That sets, I think, the foundation to the self awareness. And then, in addition to the compassion, which we talked about, having giving a space for allowing the what is. I feel as though, especially us women, we have such high expectations for ourselves, want things to look a certain way, and then in the world of social media, we're always comparing ourselves. However, when we let go of the should, then we make space for the good. Then we can make space for the what is when we let go of some of that expectations. I love your face right now. For those
Yes.
who are watching it. And it just makes such a difference to give space for that allowance so that we're not, trying to keep up with the Joneses, and we're not trying to live a version outside of ourselves, but just to allow the what is. And then in the evening, when you get home, to give yourself a moment of gratitude. And really, it be done at any time. It doesn't have to be in the evening, but that's my short recipe there. Waking up with intention, giving yourself compassion and allowance in the middle. And then in the evening, if you think about like what went well, because our minds already are primed to think of the negative just for survival. But if we really practice on, okay, these are three things that were, pleasantly surprising today. Doesn't have to be the Thanksgiving traditional list. Yes, we're all thankful for the roof over our heads and family and food. But if we think about like, well, I got home, in 25 minutes instead of 30, or, this person wasn't as challenging today, or I'm glad I, got this big thing off of my to-do list. These little things really measure up to the big. And when we allow the gratitude, then the more seek good that we then the more good that we'll continue to see and experience. And that is how you are able to find joy in life and to reduce this overwhelm and this feeling of always having to be on the go, but giving yourself space and pause for yourself and to appreciate all the good that we have in our world.
That's good. That's good. Sweet. Thank you for giving us a way to I love starting the day with setting the intention. I love that. I love ending my day with gratitude. I love that you gave us a good, quick recipe of how to do it. I don't know where to start. There you go. There you go. So, as we wrap up today, what are ways that people can connect with you? One, if they want ways to be a better mom and need a mom coach, ways to take care of themselves as a mom. I think as mothers, we again put ourselves last or even not on the list. And so, how can we connect with you for that purpose? How can we connect if we're living in New Jersey? We need a mental health therapist. How can we connect with you if we need a guest speaker to come and share more about any of these topics that we're talking about, mindful living? So, how can people connect with you?
My website is freetobemindful.com, and there is where you'll find all of my services and offerings, which includes the private coaching via Amiga Moms and yes, therapy for children and for moms based in New Jersey. As you know, we have these state licensing rules. And then my social media is found on there as well. I'm at Counselor V De Jesus on all platforms. And I have a lot of not just education, but I like to call it edutainment, right? A mix of education and entertainment. And you can find a lot of that on whether it be Instagram or on my YouTube, where I not only talk about mental health, but really how you can find it even in our everyday TV shows, which is a series that I have on my YouTube as well. But the base is freetobemindful.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Vanessa. So grateful for you to join the podcast. So grateful for you to share just some practical, very mindful ways to just live and free to be mindful. Like, I love it. And so thank you so much, Vanessa. I appreciate you.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is great.
Awesome. All right, listeners, have a beautiful day. Keep living, keep loving, and keep daring well. Take care, guys. God bless.